welcome to Crime in Court. My name is Heather, and this is going to be the testimony of day two of the Richard Allen trial for the Delphi case, Indiana versus Richard Allen. And we are going so obviously we don't have video, we don't have audio. Judge Gull, has denied it many, many times, many requests from many individuals who wanted video or audio. She is really not letting him have a public or a fair trial, in my opinion, but that'll be up for the appellate courts when and if he is convicted of this crime, the crime against Abby and Libby. So we went through in the this is like a new series. I'll start a new playlist on my station so that everything from the trial is in one place. So just so you know, we're going to be doing recaps for each day's testimony, just so because I feel like this is a really important case that we need to be watching. For some reason, Judge Gull wants it to happen in secret and very few public eyes to actually see this case, and that I believe there's a reason for that. There's usually a reason when government doesn't want you to look. When they say look the other way, it's because they're probably doing something that is harming the public. It's just my opinion only here. All right, so I said I'm going to get you guys like the best information. I'm going to try to get you guys the best notes and whatnot. At this point in time, I've got a few local boots on the ground reporters that are tweeting periodically throughout the trial whenever they get a break. There's no phones, there's no computers, you can't bring anything other than a legal pad of paper and a pen to take your notes. So that is what people are doing, and we are lucky enough to have them come out and tweet on their breaks during court. And so that is how we are going to look through wait a minute. No, that's right. Sorry. I confused myself. That's how we're going to go through with these. So sorry for that lapse of talking there for a second. All right. So the first individual, I'm trying to get you, like I said, lots of people are putting out notes, people are putting out tweets. So I'm gathering for each episode the best articles, tweets, whatever, notes that I can find for you and read through them during the trial because that's the best we have right now. So let's get started with this Kyla Russell. Kyla B. Russell is her Twitter or X handle, and she's a local reporter with Wish TV. So she says this is update number 1 from day 2 of the Delphi double homicide trial. So just as a reminder, they are meeting on Saturdays. They are convening on Saturdays to continue the proceedings. So they're meeting 6 days a week. So this particular past Saturday was, I believe, abbreviated. It was shortened. So they didn't go all the way until 6, but they started at 9 like a normal day. And we will see what that day was like as we read through these notes. So the first witness called by the state today was Steve Mullen. We've read through some of his depositions in the past. I believe he had to testify at a hearing. So Mullen was the Delphi chief of police in 2017 and was on duty the day of the homicides. Mullen said February 13th was a routine day for him. He went home after work, and that's when he learned the two girls went missing. Mullen said he did not participate in the search party on site, but did help with dispatch. He left dispatch at 2 a.m. on February 14th. At that time, he did not believe anyone had hurt the girls and thought they would return home. He returned to dispatch at 7:30 a.m. on the 14th. Mullen described when he heard the girls' bodies were found and noting on the courtroom map where they were located. Hold that thought. He says he met with Abby and Libby's families around 2 p.m. to say that they had found the bodies and were working on identification. So that is one of Kyla's tweets. Before we move on to her next tweet, here is a map. So I wanted to bring this to you guys. Here's a map, I believe that they're, or something similar to this, that they are using in court. We don't know because public can't see the exhibits or anything, but this was posted on one of the tweets. So you should be able to see my mouse moving on the screen. So here's Freedom Bridge, which we talk about, that gets discussed multiple times throughout this case. Downtown Delphi is over in the direction to your left of the screen. The Hoosier Heartland Highway, Indiana 25, runs this way. We've got the Hoosier Harvest Store, which is discussed in the probable cause affidavit and other things. This is the County Road 300 North, which the cars are seen on, and using Monon High Trail. So you can get on, here's the Mears entrance, which would have been where the girls were dropped off. And most people get on the trails when they, if you're parking over here by um, the Hoosier Harvest Store or wherever you may park. Morning Heights Cemetery, no, you're not going to be parking there. So you would be parking somewhere over in this, where my mouse is swirling, somewhere there if you can find parking. It doesn't look like there's a lot of parking, so looks like you have to just go wherever you can find parking here. So, but this is the entrance, the Mears entrance. So the girls were dropped off by Kelsey. We heard Kelsey's testimony in part or day one and opening statements and testimony recap. So that's where the girls were dropped off, and they most likely, well, we don't know. Did they go towards? They went towards Monon High Bridge. So you could either go when you get there, you can either go to the Monon High Bridge or you can go to Freedom Bridge. So they're in opposite directions. Abby and Libby Williams' bodies were found over in this area where my mouse is circling. So in this Deer Creek area. So again, if you're on this Monon High Bridge, you can see down in that area. So if somebody is like up in this, well, I would think if someone's up here looking for missing girls, they would be able to look down and possibly see them from that area. I'm not exactly sure, but it seems plausible. We were told that even up as high as Monon High Bridge is, or no, I'm sorry, that was Freedom Bridge. Freedom, you're able to see down below where the water is, and you can see the fish, which is where Richard Allen was going. So there you have it. All right, so that is the map that they reference there. All right, so her next tweet from day 2 says the second person called by the state today was Jake Johns. Jake was a search party member who spotted Libby's tie-dye shirt in Deer Creek. Jake knew the Germans well, and he lived in Delphi his entire life. Jake joined the search on February 14th. He and a firefighter standing nearby tried to contact police to report the shirt, but John said they could not get a hold of anyone. Hold on, my dog is. Does anybody else have a dog that likes to spin and spin and spin until they find their spot to sit down? Well, she does this under a blanket, and I got to hold the blanket up for her while she spins and spins and spins. Otherwise, the blanket gets caught on her. She's very irritating sometimes. All right, I did this. I got her to like going under blankets, I think. Anyways, sorry. So Jake knew the Germans. He joined the search on February 14th. He and a firefighter standing nearby tried to contact police to report the shirt, but Johns said they could not get a hold of anybody. So this Jake Johns was trying to report the tie-dyed shirt. At what point in time of the search party? This was on the 14th. 14th. So this does not prove anything about the clothing being there prior to the state's timeline. It doesn't prove or disprove. Basically, it could go either way because the shirt wasn't found until after the girls were there and found also. All right, so the firefighter went to the shirt himself and also located a pair of black Nike shoes. Remember, Libby's grandma said that Libby always wore Nike shoes. So, yes, these were the shoes that belonged to Libby. Brad German and Kelsey also arrived. I'm not sure who Brad German is, family member, obviously, and Kelsey, the older sister who dropped them off. That's when Johns said another member of the search party said, "We have found the bodies." So he finds the tie-dyed shirt. He tries calling Delphi police, right? He calls he and a firefighter tried to contact the police. Nobody answered. So he tries to get the shirt himself, located the shoes. Then the bodies were found. So that's pretty much the order of things for Jake Johns. Next, update number 3 for day number 2. The next person called by the state was Pat Brown. Brown found the bodies of Abby Williams and Libby German on February 14th, 2017. He described the moments leading up to and the moments following. He also explained exactly where the bodies were found. Brown became emotional as he told the court, "We found them." And the final update that she has on X for the second day is the last person to be called to the stand today was Deputy Mitchell Catron at the Carroll County Sheriff's Office. So, Carroll County Sheriff's Office Deputy Mitchell Catron. He was the first law enforcement officer to the trails to help search for the girls. Catron described searching the property of Brad Weber near the trails. So we talked about him in the last part where he came up in testimony. He had a firearm with ammunition that could have matched the particular bullet that was found at the scene. They did not rule his gun out, so potentially he's still a suspect. Weber told Catron that he could search the area. He was not bloody or sweaty, not like the individuals who were seen by Betsy Blair. Betsy Blair didn't say that they were bloody and muddy. It was the Sarah Carbell witness that said that they were muddy and bloody and looked like they slaughtered a pig, apparently, in the second time that they made the statement. So this is an article by the same woman. Oh no, sorry, this is Michaela Springer, but I believe Kyla Russell provided input to this article. The story has been corrected to change the spelling of former Deputy Chief Steve Mullen's name. All right, let's zoom this in a little bit here so we can all see because I'm blind. So this is again Wish TV. 7 years, 8 months, and 5 days after Abby Williams and Libby German went missing in Delphi, the trial for accused life taker Richard Allen started Friday. Allen, 52, is charged with homicide and homicide while committing or attempting to commit kidnapping in the loss of lives of the 13-year-old Abigail Abby Williams and 14-year-old Liberty Libby German. The girls' bodies were found near the Monon High Bridge near Delphi on February 14th, 2017, a day after they went missing. Allen was first investigated in 2017. He wasn't investigated, he gave a statement, but sure. Says Allen was first investigated in 2017 and again in October 2022. Following the second interview, he was taken into custody. After the first interview, basically he came to them voluntarily and said, "I was there. Maybe if I give you a statement, you might get some kind of, tip from that or something. Lo and behold, they forget that they even interview Richard Allen, and then 5 years later, they're like, "Oh yeah, it's you. You're our guy." Anyways, so Saturday's court session began at 9 a.m. and or it was set to anyways. And here's a little more in-depth detail about the testimony. And I'm going to read you multiple people's perspectives in these because I want to make sure that we're kind of getting a clear picture, not just, one person or two people's words for it. We want to see that people are being consistent in their reporting because we have to hold them accountable now because mass media lies. So hopefully the local reporting will be a lot better, I think, than the national reporting. So, all right, so Pat Brown testimony. This is the man who found the girl's body. The court's second session started just before 11 a.m. So they might have taken a break there. With testimony from state witness Pat Brown, another search party member and lifelong Delphi resident. Brown's home is 1.5 miles from the High Monon Bridge, and he participated in search efforts on the 14th. Brown told the jury he'd known Libby German's grandfather, Mike Patty, since high school and also knew Libby. He said he was at home eating dinner and watching TV when his wife told him Libby and Abby Williams went missing. Brown said he called a man named Tom Mears for help and went out in the dark to search for the girls. Brown pointed out his drive from his home to the Morning Heights Cemetery. Let's look at that again. Where's the cemetery? Do we see a cemetery? Oh, yeah, the Morning Heights Cemetery is over here. Brown pointed out his drive from his home to the Morning Heights Cemetery on the courtroom map. He said he stopped at a man named Ron Logan's house to ask if he saw the girls, then continued to the bridge to talk to search party members. Afterwards, he drove to the nearby Mears property and he drove to the nearby Mears property and met with Tom to look for Libby and Abby. Brown said he called off work on February 14th to help with search efforts. He and Mears drove into town where Brown and Delphi Police Chief Steve Mullen was heading up the search. Mullen said in his testimony earlier Saturday that he did not head up the search. Brown picked up, so who's the head of the search then? Nobody wants to claim it. Brown picked up his daughter around 11 a.m. on February 14th and soon received a call from Mears to say they'd found Libby's shirt along Deer Creek. Brown went to the north side of the creek and found the girls' bodies on the way. So he just found them on the way to go look at the tie-dyed shirt. That kind of is suspicious to me, too. Brown said he thought they were mannequins at first and became emotional as he told the court we found them. Melissa, a relative of the Patties, was with Brown when they spotted the girls. She ran off to call the police. Brown noted on the courtroom map where he found the girls and said he got within 5 feet of their bodies. Police arrived before Brown left the scene. Defense attorney Andrew Baldwin questioned Brown, focusing on the sound of voices, what could be heard, and if Brown had cell service while in the woods. We learned in the first part that sound carried very well in this area. It's a big open area. You could have a squirrel cross the way making noise and you would hear it because it's just that good. Like it's amplified. So, with that being said, if there were girls screaming or if there was some kind of an altercation taking place and being abducted or something like that, you probably would have heard something rather than nothing at all. And there were people around that day, nobody heard anything. There were at least 4 people on the bridge, apparently, or in that area, when supposedly, according to the state's timeline, the girls' lives were taken. But the defense, obviously, they believe that the girls' lives were taken probably at a different time. They're not as convinced as the state. So, where were we? Brown answered the officer Brown answered that officers arrived within 5 minutes of being called, and it didn't take long for the area to be secured. Saturday's session ended after the jury was shown a photograph of Libby's shirt and shoes in the muddy water. So that's how it ended. I think the problem here is they're going backwards in time. So yeah, so that was the end of the day. So let's start at the beginning. Sorry about that. All right. So brief summary of day one. No, we don't need that. 8 a.m. News 8's Kyla Russell reports that there is a much smaller crowd outside the Carroll County Courthouse for the second day of trial. That was Saturday. It was Court was set to run from 9 a.m. to noon Saturday. At 9 a.m., Richard Allen arrived in court on Saturday wearing a blue striped button down and glasses. News 8's Kyla Russell. Where did I get Brown? I don't know. Ah, my brain does weird things. News 8's Kyla Russell reported that Richard Allen, sorry. Okay, Heather, get it together. Kyla reported that Richard Allen was seen looking back at his mother and his wife. Libby and Amby's families were all present in the courtroom as well. Moving on, Stephen Mullen's testimony, Delphi Chief of Police in 2017. This is the first witness called to the stand by the prosecution, Steve Mullen, who served as Delphi's Chief of Police in 2017 and was on duty the night of the homicides. Mullen described February 13th as a routine day and spoke about hearing radio traffic and receiving texts about Libby German and Abby Williams' disappearance. During his testimony, Mullen stood up and approached a map of the trial on a TV and pointed out where Abby and Libby entered. And I showed you already they came in at the Mears entrance and they were found. Mears entrance, they came in, they walked along this way. Somehow they got down here and their bodies were left in this area. Where was After learning that the girls did not return, Mullen said he contacted Delphi Middle School and spoke with the search party. Mullen did not participate in the search, but he had stayed behind at dispatch to help. He was on dispatch. Mullen said when he left dispatch, it was about 2 a.m. on February 14th. He told the court that he did not believe anyone had hurt the girls and believed that they would return home. He returned to work at 7:30 a.m. on February 14th and met with the search party. He said he did not direct them where to go. Allen's attorneys, Andrew Baldwin, objected to Mullen's testimony about the search, saying Mullen only knew the whereabouts of the search because he was at dispatch. Mullen continued his testimony by describing when he heard the girls' bodies were found and noting on the courtroom map where they were located. He said he met with Abby and Libby's families around 2 p.m. to say that they had found the bodies and were working on identification. Mullen said he then learned of a store near the start of the trail, that's that Hoosier Harvest store, having security cameras. The store's cameras pointed towards 300 Northwest, that's that road. So here's the Harvest store, and their cameras point out towards this 300 north. So you see any cars that are driving past. The source camera pointed on 300 north, and he received footage from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. on February 13th. He also discussed drone footage taken of the trail on February 13th, 2024, which State Prosecutor Nick McClelland said was to represent and compare what the two scenes looked like 7 years apart. So, yes, Nick McClelland entered some drone footage, and you're going to find that it was sped up. He said it was something like 9 minutes or whatever, I think, but it's really 20 minute. It's like a 20-minute walk down this way that the girl supposedly went, but Nick McClellan was trying to deceive the jury into thinking that it was only a 9-minute walk. McClellan asked Mullen what happened or what kind of people would be seen on the bridge in 2017. He answered teenagers, younger people. Baldwin then began questioning Mullen, starting by asking about improvements made on the trail since 2017. Special Judge Fran Gull chimed in, asking about the thought process behind searching for the girls downstream. Why is she interjecting? Mullen said it was in case the girls might have fallen off the bridge. Baldwin asked if Mullen went to the scene, and Mullen said he did not. So, why is this guy even here? Mullen described to the court where the bodies were found in relation to Morning Heights Cemetery, which is near the trail. He said he went to Weber's property on February 27th and 2024, so of this year, and did not elaborate about that. So that would be interesting to know why he went there this year in February. Gull asked if it would take 9 minutes to walk from the trailhead to the end of the bridge, and Mullen said about. That's where Andrew Baldwin got up and kind of redirected that and said it was more like 20 minutes. That drone footage was sped up or something. I don't know. They were trying to deceive the jury, if you ask me. All right, at 11:55 a.m., court. Oh no, sorry. Before that, Jake John's testimony. This is the person who found the tie-dyed shirt, Libby's shirt. The second person to testify Saturday was Jake Johns, a lifelong Delphi resident who works at a propane company in Delphi. Johns spotted Libby German's tie-dyed shirt in Deer Creek during search efforts. John said he knew Libby German's family and his wife worked with Libby's grandmother, Becky Patty. Johns was not familiar with Abby Williams or her family. John said he joined the search for the girls on the 14th. He said he knew they would be looking for a tie-dyed shirt that belonged to Libby and walked for 4 hours around the area and to the High Bridge where he spotted the shirt in the water. He and the firefighters standing nearby tried to contact police to report the shirt, but John said that they couldn't get a hold of anybody. The firefighter went to, to the shirt himself and also located a pair of Nike shoes that belonged to Abby. Soon after, a person living on the other side of the creek was called to come down to the search area. Brad German and Kelsey also arrived. Who is this person that lived on the other side of the creek? We have Brad Logan, not Brad Logan. What's his name? Logan, what's his face? Ron Logan, and this other person that we're just learning about. Why am I blanking on his name? I can't think of his name. Sorry, bear with me. My brain's usually brain dead. All right, so soon after, a person living on the other side of the creek was called to come down to the area. Brad German and Kelsey also arrived. I wish they would have expanded on that. That's when John said another member of the search party said, "We have found the bodies." John said he did not personally see the bodies. The defense began questioning John's, only learning that John saw footprints on February 14th on an access road near Deer Creek. After being questioned by the prosecution and defense again, nothing new was said. No further questions were asked. Alrighty then. Pat Brown, we read that already. So Pat Brown was the final. That's who I was thinking of. Pat Brown, who also lives nearby. He's a search party member, lifelong resident, and his home is a mile and a half from the Monon High Bridge. He participated in the search efforts. He might be suspicious, if you ask me. I don't know. So Brown, and who it was that who they were talking about going in that text. I don't know. Interesting. So that is all one perspective. Let's try looking at this other perspective. These are just going to be tweets running down the line as they happen. I guess she took a big break and entered all of her tweets after trial ended. This Caitlin Kendall. She's also local news. She's with WRTV. Good Morning, Indiana. She says Delphi trial day 2 was a bit of an abbreviated day in court. This thread has the latest. State calls Stephen Mullen the current Carroll County prosecutor's investigator. He was the Delphi police chief at the time of the crime. Mullins testified to his timeline of events. The girls went missing. He also drew on a map to point to the jury to a few geographical locations near the Moden High Bridge. The state then calls their seventh witness, Jake Johns. Johns is a Delphi resident who testified to his timeline the day the girls' bodies were found. He was part of the search efforts and found Libby's shirt in the water. During cross examination, don't you guys think it's weird that they weren't able to get a hold of law enforcement? And what's his butt was Steve Mullen was he was helping out at dispatch. So the chief himself was at dispatch, yet they didn't get any calls about the tie-dyed shirt. Isn't that weird? I think so. All right, so during cross-examination, did I read all that already? Yeah, during cross-examination, the defense asked about sound on the trails, and Johns testified that sound traveled easily out there. So another person corroborating that. The state calls witness 8, which is Pat Brown. Brown is a Delphi resident. He found the girls' bodies. Brown got emotional during testimony and had to pause to compose himself when describing the moment that he saw the bodies. He's stated as, quote, "We found them. I thought they were mannequins," end quote. During cross-examination, was the defense was asked about sound on the trails. He testified that he could hear fine out there. He also said that he had cell service in that area where the bodies were found. Court adjourned at 11:35 and back on Monday. So that actually makes me even more convinced. This thread right here, this text, um, he had cell service in the area where the bodies were found. So on that map, where bodies were found, cell service was um, at least in decent working order, we'll say. So, but they're saying that we talked about that in part one with the phones. I think it's Baldwin talked about it in his opening statement about how the phones stopped connecting to anything after 4:30 in the afternoon, and then 5:30 or 4:30 in the morning, they reconnect to service tower somewhere, or like, well, it start like her. Blah, blah, blah. Let me backtrack. Libby's phone starts pinging again. So no pings from that 4 p.m., 4:30 p.m. until that 5:30 a.m. time. There was no pings. And then suddenly she gets 14 pings, which makes me think somebody might have turned the phone off or put it in airplane mode. And there's proof that the phone was potentially handled because the phone comes back online and the service never ends. So why would the phone just suddenly come back online to the cell towers? It doesn't make any sense unless somebody turned it on or took airplane mode off. That's my guess that these girls were abducted, taken somewhere, and brought back to that location that night, early morning. All right, so that just confirms my thought process that the cell always would have had service. It was just that someone specifically had turned it off. or something along those lines. So here is also Dave Bangert, who has put together something for the Indiana Lafayette something or other. This is his article we're going to read. The based in Lafayette, Indiana is what he writes for. All right, so the Delphi homicide trial, family friend who found Abby and Libby's bodies tells about that day. So, in the second day of testimony in Richard Allen's trial, witness chokes up, telling the court he couldn't look at the scene as he waited for police to arrive. I stood there facing away from them. That's sad. All right, Delphi homicide trial, family friend who found Abby and Libby tells about that day. How one search party's discovery of a tie-dyed shirt tangled in tree roots along Deer Creek led to a family friend's discovery of the bodies of Abby Williams and Libby German, ending a frantic 2-day search for the Delphi 8th graders on February 14th, 2017, filled the second day of testimony Saturday in the homicide trial of Richard Allen. Testimony during morning only session in Carroll Circuit Court picked up where family members of Abby and Libby left off on the first day of trial, telling about how search parties, both formal and informal, scrambled to find the girls when they didn't show up to meet their ride from that afternoon from the bridge. So I just wanted to point out too, these are pictures taken from inside the Carroll County Courthouse. This is the best that we're going to get because we're not going to see any pictures of Judge Gull and Richard Allen and all the attorneys and people in the same room. That's not going to happen because of her weird media ban, Judge Gull. Quote, at first I thought they were mannequins, end quote. Pat Brown, a lifelong Delphi resident and friend with Libby's family, said while detailing how he discovered the girls only after getting about 5 feet away in the woods near the trail. I said, we found them, Brown testified, choking up and telling the court he didn't look at the scene as he waited for police to arrive. I stood there facing away from them. This is a picture of Richard Allen, obviously. I think that's like one of his more recent inmate photos. In opening arguments Friday, prosecutor McLeland said testimony would show that Allen 52 was the infamous bridge guy, a grainy video clip captured on Libby German's phone of a man walking across the abandoned Monon High Bridge. McLeland said the state would show that Allen followed the girls across the train trestle, 63 feet above Deer Creek, and the surrounding woods the afternoon of February 13th. Remember, we saw a picture of Abby, and there was nobody that Libby took on her phone, and there was no one behind them. And you could see quite a ways. I wonder if they have it pictured here. They don't. All right, so McLeland said the state would show that Allen followed the girls across the bridge. McLeland told jurors pulled this week from Allen County 92 miles away due to the high publicity surrounding the case that Allen used a gun to force Abby and Libby down the hill at the southeastern end of the bridge before cutting their necks, leaving the scene and hiding in plain sight, working at the CVS pharmacy in Delphi for the next 5.5 years. He wasn't hiding in plain sight because he wasn't hiding. He didn't do anything. But okay. Defense contended in opening, and you know what? I'm open to the fact that he could be the potential perpetrator of this crime, but I don't think, based on everything that we know so far, I really don't think so. Defense contended in opening arguments that the prosecution's case was built to quickly fall apart. Andrew Baldwin, one of 3 attorneys on the defense team, dismissed dozens of alleged confessions investigators say Allen made that were the product of solitary conditions in a maximum security unit at Westville Correctional Facility that wrecked his mental state as he awaited trial. Baldwin told jurors that evidence about cell phone data, flaws in matching a bullet near that was found near the girls to a gun owned by Allen, and holes in the timeline presented by the state will prove that Allen didn't do it. Here are some highlights from Saturday morning's testimony during the state's case, all revolving around the search for the girls. Former Delphi police chief on a routine day that day. Steve Mullen, now an investigator for the Carroll County Prosecutor's Office, was Delphi police chief in February 2017. He testified Saturday that he'd gone home around 5 or 5:30 p.m. after his shift. Simply, it was a routine day that day, Mullen said. He said it was long after, though, he heard police radio traffic about two missing girls. He said he also started getting texts from community members. He said he called the Carroll County Sheriff's Office dispatch to check in on what was happening. Libby German's grandma, sister, and father testified about dropping the girls off at the Mears entrance to the Monon High Bridge trail, but the only person that dropped them off was Kelsey. So I don't know how Derek German or Becky Patty could testify to where Kelsey dropped them off. So I think that's a little inaccurate there. But anyway, so just off County Road 300 North. A Snapchat photo posted by Libby showed their path across the Monon High Bridge. Derek German told about going to look for Abby and Libby when they didn't return to the Mears entrance when he told them to meet for a ride. After the family searched, they called police for help shortly after 5 p.m. Mullen said he went to the sheriff dispatch center to provide assistance in, quote, any way I could, end quote, to find the girls. He reached out to Delphi Community Middle School to get names of friends and acquaintances who might have known where they'd gone that Monday, a day off from school. So they had the day off. It was a normal Monday to everybody else, except the girls had the day off. And that's why they decided to go to the bridge. He said he didn't go to the Monon High Bridge, this Mullen guy, instead working from dispatch to help coordinate things until the initial search was called off just after 2 a.m. Why'd they call the search off after 2? Maybe just to say, let's regroup and start again in the morning? I don't know. I didn't suspect anything nefarious, Mullen testified. I still believed, given time, they would return home. I couldn't imagine anyone had done any harm to them. Yeah, that's not where your mind goes immediately, unless you're like a worry like me. But um, normally, like that's not the first thing you would be. The first thing you would be like, "Ugh, God, why aren't they answering their phone? Like she always has her phone, and here it is. I'm supposed to pick her up, and of course she's not here." Like I'd be, frustrated. That would be your first reaction. Is like, why isn't she here? Knowing that I was coming, but and normally you would think, you don't think the worst of things. You try not to, anyways. All right, so the next morning, volunteers were gathering at the fire station to help with the search in daylight. Mullen said he supplied maps and teamed people up in 2 and 3s, gave them his cell phone number, and sent them out. About the maps, McClellan commented that he had to catch himself and remember that the jury wasn't from Carroll County and likely wouldn't know the sites and landmarks familiar to lifelong Delphi residents. He spent time Saturday having Mullen mark spots along the trail from the Freedom Bridge over the Hoosier Heartland Highway to the Monon High Bridge, as well as spots that witnesses referenced along County Road 300 North. So basically, they went over the map. Mullen also narrated a low flying drone tour. So they played a video of a low flying drone touring the Monon High Bridge Trail. This was taken by Tippecanoe County Sheriff's Department on February 13th, 2024. So, of this year, on the anniversary of them going missing, oddly enough, they go and do a drone test. A time meant to give a sense of the landscape on that day. The difference, he said, would be the more recent improvements on the trail and on the decking and rails that would they now overlook Monon High Bridge before there were no rails and it was pretty much in ruins, and people bravely crossed this thing. I would not get on it. Couldn't pay me enough. Most of that project was done in 2022 and dedicated in September 2023, the work that they did on Monon High Bridge. Mullen said the search teams covered the woods and fields near the trail, focusing downstream on Deer Creek. So, downstream, I don't know where downstream is, but looks like this is all Deer Creek here. Oops. Ah, forgot where I was. All right, here. Uh, All right, so Mullins, I didn't even need to switch tabs. I thought I was on a different tab. Mullins said search teams covered the woods and fields near the trail, focusing downstream on Deer Creek, which flows east to west, in case the girls had fallen off the bridge and into the water. Mullins testified that he, Indiana State Police Sergeant Kim Riley, and the department's chaplain met with Abby and Libby's families around 2 p.m. February 14th and told them that the two bodies had been found and that investigators were working to make identifications. Mullen said that later a neighbor mentioned that the Hoosier Harvest Store on County Road 300 North just went just west of the Mears entrance had security cameras pointing in two directions to the road. All right, so Hoosier Harvest Store has two directions, both directions probably of that 300 road. He said he reviewed that footage and took pictures of the cell phone of cars, took pictures on the cell phone of cars that had gone by in the daylight. He testified that he wasn't able to see vehicles that had gone by in the dark. Interesting. The discovery of a tie-dyed shirt in Deer Creek. Jake Johns, a Delphi resident, said he knew about the search started February 13th from his wife, Jennifer, who worked with Becky Patty, Libby German's grandma. Johns testified that when he clocked in the next morning, his boss at Pearson's of Delphi, a propane delivery company, asked if he wanted to use his shift to help search. We said, sure, Johns said. Johns said John said he teamed up with his coworker Shane Haygood instead of going to the fire department staging area in town. We figured they didn't need more commotion, he said. Johns testified that they drove to Riley Park, which is just on Deer Creek, 3 blocks from the Carroll County Courthouse. John said they walked on the side of the creek, spread out about 10 feet apart for nearly 4 hours, making it past the Monon High Bridge. He said they'd kept an eye out for a tie-dyed shirt, which his wife had told him had been part of Becky Patty's description of what the girls were wearing. It's a very descriptive uh, item to be looking for, so kind of a good thing that she was wearing something kind of unique. All right, so Johns testified that they spotted what looked like a tie-dyed shirt in the roots of a tree sticking into Deer Creek near the High Bridge. He said the water was too deep, about halfway across the creek, to get to the other side with the muck boots he had on. But they found a firefighter stationed up a hill on County Road 625 West on the south side of Deer Creek where they were. Johns testified that the firefighter tried to call someone to report it, but couldn't get through. Johns said the firefighter got to the end of Monon High Bridge and crossed to the other side of the creek, crossed to the other side to check out the shirt. Johns said the firefighter found a tie-dyed shirt and some black Nike shoes. No evidence or testimony Saturday specifically identified who the shirt or shoes belonged to. We know Libby was wearing the tie-dyed shirt and Nike sneakers, which her grandma testified she wore all the time. John said that Haygood had the number for Pat Brown, who had been searching on the other side of the creek, near the trail. Johns and Haygood told Brown to walk toward where they were because they'd spotted the shirt. Johns testified that Haygood was on the phone with Brown when Brown came across the girls' bodies. Jennifer Auger, one of Allen's attorneys, asked Johns to tell about a slide they saw that day on the hill near the bridge. John said they'd seen where rocks and dirt had been disturbed. So were people sliding down a specific area to try to um, get to the lower ground? Because if the abductor said down the hill, how did they get down the hill? Did they slide down the hill? Were they pushed down the hill, shoved down? How did they? Was this a slide or something used to get them all down the hill? Finding the girls' bodies. Pat Brown, a lifelong Delphi resident, got home from his job in the maintenance department at the Tate and Lyle plant in Lafayette the afternoon of February 13th, 2017. He stopped at an auto parts store to get an oil filter after his 7 to 3 p.m. shift, changed the oil in his SUV, and drove the vehicle to Monticello with his wife to sell it. After firing up the grill for dinner, his wife told him about a post Becky Patty had on Facebook about Libby and Abby missing and not answering calls or texts. Brown said he called Mike Patty, Libby's grandpa, and a friend he'd gone to school with to ask what he could do. He said it was already dark when he reached Mike Patty. Brown testified that he went to the cemetery along County Road 300 North to look around, called neighbor Tom Mears to see if he could help, and stopped at Ron Logan's house nearby along 300 North to see if he'd seen the girls. This another neighbor, Tom Mears, Ron Logan, and Pat Brown. These all are potential suspects, witnesses, what have you. They also were, well, we know Brown was searching. I don't know about Ron Logan. All right. So back at the cemetery, Brown said he worked his way down a ravine towards the high bridge. He testified that he spoke to other people searching before heading to the Mears entrance to the trailhead, seeing flashlights scattered around working the area. Remember, multiple witnesses have now said that there were flashlights around the area where the girls were found. So, again, makes me believe that those girls were not there before 2 a.m. If the search was called off at 2, I don't think the girls were brought back until after 2. Just a thought. All right, so where were we? In the flashlights. When we got home later that night, he decided to drive back to town to get a can of Skoal smokeless tobacco. On the way home, he drove country roads as that he knew north of the Mona High Bridge to see if the girls maybe were walking home or walking to town. I was just trying to see, Brown said. On February 14th, Brown testified that he called off work, drove to town, and rejoined the search. He and Tom Mears searched several properties, including a cave they knew about, only to find that it had collapsed long ago. That afternoon, while near the cemetery, Brown testified that Shane Haygood called him and told him about the clothing that was found. He'd run into Melissa Marchand, a relative of Libby's, so more people we don't know, who joined him on the as he started making his way towards where Haygood was. So this Melissa started joining, a relative of Abby started joining Brown as they were going towards this Shane Haygood who had found the shirt. That's when we came across the girls, Brown testified. As Marchand ran back towards the trailhead, Brown called Mullen. Other search parties started coming from other directions but didn't get closer as he turned away from the scene and waited for police. A juror asked a question on day 2, which was read by Judge Gull, about how long it took police to get there. Seems like it takes forever in a situation like that, Brown said. He said it was about 5 minutes, though. He said police took his statement and then asked him and others around the area to go back the way they came as they took over the crime scene. The trial resumes 9 a.m. Monday in Carroll County. So there you go. Or Carroll Circuit Court, whatever. Carroll County. So, what did you guys think of that? Just bringing you guys some different perspectives. I think it's good to get a couple different people's articles so that, you can kind of read between the lines and assert for yourself what you find to be credible and not credible. So I will leave you guys with that. Let me know if you have questions, concerns. Oh, wait, no, I did have more about the jury question here. Is Deer Creek to the south or north or closer to the cemetery? Nobody answered that because they have to look at the video or maps. That's evidence. Nobody can just answer that for them. I think jury question number 2. Jurors asked Steve Mullen why investigators organized focused a search for the missing girls downstream from the Monon High Bridge. We requested clarity on where bodies were found if drone video shown to the jury. Sorry, my dog is so loud when he walks. He requested clarity, or the jury requested clarity on where the bodies were found, if the drone video shown to jury reflected real time or if it was slowed down, sped up, and if actual time to walk, what was the actual time to walk from Freedom Bridge to Monon High Bridge? They, the drone said 9 minutes. The length of the drone video is 9 minutes. So what is the actual video? The answer, you guys, was that the video was sped up 2 times. So it's approximately a 20-minute walk. That is extremely valid, relevant, important to know as a juror. I feel if the jury didn't ask this question, they would have all been misled that it was a 9-minute walk from Freedom Bridge to Monon High Bridge. But that's been debunked. And the third question, jurors asked Pat Brown who his cell phone provider was in 2017, how long it took police to get to the scene of the bodies after he called to report that he found the girls, and how quickly the crime scene was secured by law enforcement. And we don't get an answer for that either. So some questions they just can't answer. There's either not someone to bring that evidence in, or it's just not proper, whatever it may be. So at least we got an answer to the video, which was it's 2 times sped up, which reminds me of, the inverted Sallyport video in Karen Reed case. You're submitting evidence that is altered and not telling the jury or the witness that you're talking to about said evidence that this thing is altered. Definitely, in my opinion, trying to mislead the jury and trying to maybe make something fit in their short window time frame that they need it to. So think about that. All right, I hope you guys liked this kind of version of doing things. I will keep these up as long as you guys are watching. So I think it's interesting. I think we need to keep our eyes on cases that are being shrouded in secrecy for sure. So, thank you guys so much for watching. I really appreciate you so much. Thank you for the comments, the likes, all of it, the shares, whatever you guys do. I appreciate it just for being here. So, thank you guys so much for being here and take care. Bye now.